of Epol Experts. We've now reached the stage of episode 6, and we're now starting to look at actual management during the growing and finishing phase of our broilers. I've got the privilege today to be joined by Phiri Tau. He's the broiler technical manager at Cobb SA. Now, I can't think of a better person to take us through this presentation than Phiri. He's got more than 15 years experience in Rainbow and RCL Foods, practically broiler farming, being a farm manager, working his way through the ranks, and now even advising clients in the field how to manage their broilers. So it's a real privilege and an honor to introduce you to Phiri Tau. He'll take you through the presentation, managing the brooding phase specifically, looking at the first 14 days of your broiler's life cycle. So without any further ado, I would like to hand you over to Phiri Tau. Thanks, Phiri.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you for the time you've given me to be part of your very much interesting initiative, whereby you like to reach out to your farmers to make sure that they manage their chickens properly. So, as you have already mentioned, my name is Phiri Tau. I'm a broiler technical manager at Cobb SA and RCL Food. So today it's an honor to be with you, all the guys that have already joined in. So I hope you'll find it interesting and maybe take what we will be sharing, then go and apply on your farms and make sure that you improve on your performances. So today we will be looking at managing the brooding phase, which is actually the development phase of your chickens. The first 2 weeks, which is very critical for your performance. So the effort that you put on at this phase will determine the outcome of your performance at the end of the cycle. So this is the critical phase whereby we need to put more effort. So that's where we actually see how your performance will be at the end of the cycle. That's why we differentiate a good farm manager and a bad farm manager. So hopefully you will take this information through and go and apply it to your farm. So I will just jump into it straight. Then, so today what we'll be covering, we'll look into the pre-placement house setup, which is the preparation of your houses before you place your beds. So in other words, this period before you place your beds, there's a planning and actions that you have to take before you even place your beds. So we'll go through briefly on the pre-placement setup. Then we'll thereafter go into our brooding principles, whereby we look into temperature, air quality, the feed and water intake, and the lighting. Remember, folks, that this period, this is where we want to make sure that we give the birds a good environment. And in terms of environment, we're looking at your temperature and your air quality that the birds requires. So you need to make sure that you give them the best environment so that you can unlock the genetic potential of your birds. So the first thing that you need to put into your perspective before you even go in terms of brooding, you need to plan around how are you gonna do your brooding, whether you go full house brooding, whereby you brood the whole house, or you opt for partial brooding or partial house brooding, whereby you will just demarcate a space inside your chicken house so that you can brood on a smaller space. Ideally, it will be just to make sure that you don't go high on your heating cost, and also just to make sure that you give the birds the temperatures that require. So if you opt for partial brooding, you must always bear in mind that you don't want to keep the birds cramped on one space. You know, as the chickens comes in, they will still be small. You can put them on a smaller space, but as they grow, you need more feeding space. So the main idea is to make sure that you don't keep them too long on one space. So I've put on this slide a table to show you after 3 days that you need to open up a space for those bays so that they can have more feeding space, because you don't want that the competition to be high on one spot. So make sure that you implement this table so that your chickens can be more comfortable and can consume as much feed at early stage, and then they can develop properly as they go forward. So if you opt on your partial brooding, you need to make sure that put a demarcated space, make sure that you lay everything, the bedding, and you put enough feed on the papers. We will see as we go along what you need to do. So the other thing you need to plan around after having that space whereby you're gonna start off for your brooding is the bedding. You need to go for bedding. There's different types of bedding materials that you can choose from, or the one that is readily or easily accessible for you. So ideally, the pine wood shavings is the best bedding material that you can opt for. If you can be able to access that will be great, because that's the one that easily can absorb your moisture in your house, and you can easily dry it with ventilation so that your bays are more comfortable on on the bedding that you're using. So the main thing here is to make sure that when you lay your bedding inside your chicken house, you must make sure that your bedding is dry, and also your floor should be dry, because you don't want to start off with a wet bedding whereby it will be hard for you to dry it. And if the chickens comes and sit on a wet bedding, then they're not gonna be active, and they're not gonna consume as much feed as supposed to consume. So the other aspect around the bedding is to ensure that the depth of your bedding, regardless of what bedding you're choosing, at least the depth should be at least 3 centimeters deep. So another important factor as we're still planning around preparation is the brooding equipment that we're using. There's different types of brooding equipment that you can use out there on the market. The main thing is to make sure that the heating system you're using has got a sufficient capacity. So oftentimes when you are to select on what brooding equipment that you want to use, the equipment will be specified whereby they will write on it what's the capacity. Oftentimes it goes at some kilowatts. So you need to know how much capacity this heating system has, and also with that capacity you can work out on how many brooding equipment that you need for the capacity of the chickens that you're going to put in your chicken house. So the main thing is choose the right brooding equipment and ensure that it's functional. Now, another aspect that you need to bear in mind is preheating. You need to preheat our houses way before the chickens comes. Ideally, summer you can get away at 24 hours before chick placement, but winter we recommend that you need to go at least 48 hours before the chick comes into your chicken house, because the main idea around that is we need the floor temperatures to be as good as possible. We need the ambient temperatures to be all right in your chicken house 24 hours before chick placement. So as we go through, you will see that what temperature guides that you're supposed to adhere to. So during this period of brooding phase, which you can also call development phase, we must bear in mind that this is where we want to make sure that we give, like I said earlier, we need to give these birds a temperature and air quality that is conducive for them to immediately consume the feed immediately after we place those chickens. So the chickens that I want you to know is there's a transition phase whereby a chick from day 0 to day 5, at that time we regard it as a cold-blooded. So during that period, the chicken cannot maintain its body temperature. So we need to know that these birds are, at that period, they are very sensitive to temperature differences. So if the house is too cold, the chickens will react to that. And if it's too hot also, they will react to that. And however it goes, if it goes to an extreme temperatures, definitely they will be affected in terms of feed consumption, and if they don't consume, they're not going to put more. They're not going to put on weight, and eventually, at the end of the cycle, you will never reach those desired weight that you'll be looking for. So, at all costs, at all time, we need to keep our birds at thermo-neutral zone. In actual fact, we mean the birds should be comfortable in a way that they don't have to work to maintain their body temperature. In terms of working to maintain their body temperature when it's cold, the birds will huddle together and they will shiver there. That shivering, they're actually using their body to try to generate heat. So by so doing, they're now using the energy that was supposed to be put in for them to develop in terms of weight. If it's too hot, they will pant, and by so doing, they're doing something to maintain their body temperature. So at all costs, we need to make sure that we give them a temperature that they don't have to do any of that. They must just be comfortable so that they can easily access feed and water, then they can put on weight immediately. So what are the goals for brooding? What is it that we want to achieve during this phase? The first thing is we need to make sure, we need to provide an environment so that we can stimulate early feed and water intake. So by so doing, in actual fact, when the chickens come into your in your house, the first minute they come in, they must start consuming. They shouldn't huddle together because of the temperature. So we need to get early feed and water intake so that we can accelerate growth. Obviously, once they eat, they will convert the feed into weight, so then they're growing. So another thing we need to achieve is we need like we said, is the development phase. We need the skeletal to develop the cardiovascular and the gut development, which is very, very crucial, because the gut, remember, the gut is responsible to grind, to eat. The chicken will eat the feed, it will go through the system, and then eventually the gut, through the gut, they will absorb those nutrients so that they can build up the muscles and everything. So the gut development is very much crucial. And by giving them a good temperatures, the chicken can have a good gut development. So another very important aspect here is the flock information, meaning, so the flock uniformity. So by uniformity, we're looking at, oftentimes the birds come in your chicken house, they are at the same weight or same size, but we realize that after 3-4 weeks, actually the second week, you see there's discrepancies in terms of the body size. You've got the big ones and the small ones. What happened is only because during this brooding phase, something went wrong. So we need to put more effort on this at this point in time. So another thing we need to achieve is the good FCR, our efficiencies, whereby the bird, whenever it eats feed, it must convert that feed into weight at a certain rate. So if our brooding management was good, definitely you will achieve that good FCR, which is where we say that's where your money is. Your FCR, whereby you use less feed and you put more weight, then your efficiencies are looking good. So we must also think that every time when we do brooding, the main thing is we want these chickens to achieve those body weight with very minimum stress. So we know in terms of stress, if it's too hot, the chicken gets stressed. If it's too cold, chicken gets stressed. If there's no feed in your chicken now, the chicken gets stressed. So during this period, that's where we'll determine what your outcome, your final outcome would be. So as we go on now, we can see during brooding, the main thing that we'll be looking here is, I've already mentioned about preheating. So we're gonna now look at temperature as one of the aspects during brooding management. So the main thing around temperature is we need to get the concrete temperature before even your chicken come into a chicken house. Your concrete temperature should be at least 28 degrees to 30 degrees. So that's why we need to preheat the house before the chicken comes. Your bedding temperature also should be around 30 degrees to 32 degrees. Why do we want this? It's because when the chickens come into a chicken house, when the chicks comes in, we don't want them when they sit on your bedding or on your floor. They shouldn't get to a point whereby they lose the body temperature towards your bedding or your surrounding area. So the ambient temperature also should be at least 32. Inside your chicken house, we need to ensure that we attain to these temperatures. So we can use the temperature gun, as you can see on your screen. There's a guy there checking the temperatures on the floor using the temperature gun. The one that now is more popular now in terms of screening for coronavirus. So that's the one that you can use in your chicken house. So another most important thing is to use to place the mini max thermometer in your chicken house. Oftentimes you get to the farmers, they don't have this gadget, and this is the tool that you can measure in your house. What temperatures are you giving to the bed? So if the temperature is low, then you can know how to do adjustments. But if you don't have the tool to see the temperature, then you're doomed, because you will just go with your assumption that the chickens are okay. So the other thing that you can do as you go to a chicken house is to use your senses. Look at the beds, look at whether there's good activities in your chicken house. So if you go to a chicken house, as you can see on this picture here, the chickens are huddling together, meaning it's cold in your chicken house. So these chickens won't eat, won't drink water. So eventually they will have a retarded growth, they will dehydrate, and you will see around 7 days and your mortality start going up. Why? Because they haven't been eating, they've been surviving through their yolk inside their body, which will last them at least 3 days. After that, you see the spike of mortality. You wonder why my chickens are dying. It's because they haven't been eating. So, and now your 7-day mortality, it doesn't look good. And also the cows, you will end up having those runs whereby you've got different sizes. Then at your 7th day, when you do your test weight, you've got less body weight, and your mortality is up at 7 days. So we need to make sure that we adhere to these temperatures at all costs. Again, after you put the chickens in after placement, immediately after placement, you can give the birds, say, 1 hour, 2 hours max. Then you give them a chance to settle down in your chicken in the house. When you come back and watch after 2 hours or so, you need to see an activity like this on your picture, whereby the birds will have a good or even spread inside your chicken house. Some will be on the feeder lines or some on the water lines. This is a very good spread. When I go to a chicken house and I see this, then I know that, okay, this farmer he has done a good job, and you're more likely to win at the end of the cycle. So ideally, when you go to a chicken house, you need to find chickens, moving around, drinking. Some will be feeding, resting, playing. That's normal. That's what we want to see. So it's imperative to know that the chick activity is one indicator to see that the birds are comfortable. So during brooding, so I've put this graph for you so that you can see the correlation between your your concrete temperature to your 7-day mortality. So in actual fact, what we recommend is that at 7 days you should be at least at mortality of 1% and below. If you go beyond that, then we start worrying. We need to go back now and check how are we brooding, how are we doing, what is our activity around managing our brooding phase. So it is crucial that you can also see for yourself on the graph that the temperature of less than 28, then your mortality goes to 1.31. And it is evident that because the chickens haven't not been eating, definitely, like I said, at 4 days or so, you see the spike of mortality because now the chickens can't cope anymore. They haven't been eating, then they've been surviving through their yolk. Now we're going to look at the ventilation as one aspect of brooding. It is very crucial in terms of ventilation. We always say never compromise temperature with never compromise ventilation for temperature. So they go all hand in hand. So I've put the guideline here on the screen just to show you what is it that we want to attain in our chicken houses in terms of air quality. We need the oxygen of greater than 19.6%. The carbon dioxide, we need the CO2 inside your chicken house to be less than 3,000 parts per million, meaning for you to know what carbon dioxide is it in your chicken house, you need to use the gadgets like the CO2 meter that is readily available in the market, whereby you can measure what carbon dioxide is inside your chicken. The other thing is the carbon monoxide, you can see it should be greater than 10 ppm. The ammonia inside your chicken house, whereby that ammonia we know it's been generated from your bedding. Then another thing is the dust. We don't want too much dust in your chicken house. So that's why we recommend that you use a bedding material that has got little dust on it. So also the relative humidity inside your chicken house, which is in actual fact the amount of water inside the air, that it must be at least 45 to 65%. So depending on what house you're using, whether you're using environmentally controlled houses or you use the curtain houses, for curtain houses, we know it's a bit difficult to manage your ventilation properly. But don't get me wrong here. I've seen people with curtain houses outperforming the environmentally controlled houses. So it's all about the effort that you put in your business or in your for your chickens to perform. So with the curtain-sided houses or the open-sided house, the wind direction is that's the main thing that you need to bear in mind. So every time you need to know where does the wind come from, so you can know how to manage your curtains. So for your control environmental houses, you'll be having fans, you'll be having inlets, whereby and also on your controller, you can actually work it out or set it up in a way that when the fence comes, then you can provide your minimum ventilation. So it's more easier to use the controlled environmental house because now everything is there, and you can also work around it, whereby you know how much of air that comes into your chicken house, so that you don't create too much wind into your chicken house. And the other thing on the chicken house, before I forget, is to make sure that your curtains are opening from top to bottom, because if you open it from bottom, then you have this direct air coming to a chicken house. Then they're gonna stress the bed. They're gonna affect the activity inside your chicken house. So ideally, what we want to see on this picture that I'm pointing now, we need the air to come inside your chicken house from top. Go and mix with the air that's inside the chicken house, which is the warm air that is up. What's happening is that the warm air is lighter, then it will go and sit on the roof. Now you need the incoming cooler air to mix with that hot air that is inside your chicken house. Then the air will come down to the chick level, whereby you will be providing oxygen to the bed. You will have air movement on top of your chickens, where you will be able to dry your litter, because that air now has got enough water holding capacity, whereby it will be drier, and now as it moves on top of your floor or your bedding, then it can pick up that moisture from your bedding, and now you will remain with very good dry bedding. So in terms of ventilation, other things that I can share with you is, how do you know when you go into a chicken house that you need to start ventilating your house? Some indications is when you go into your chicken house, oftentimes from day 1 to day 3, you go into a chicken house, the house smells nice, it's fresh inside your house, but from day 4, day 5, you realize that when you go into a chicken house, then there's this smell that comes to you. So that smell is an indication that something, you need to react. You need to do something here. And oftentimes you go into a chicken house, you look at your roof, you find that there's condensation taking place. There's some water hanging there. There's on the pipes, on the roof. That's another indication that, hey, something is not going right here. I need to ventilate. And again, when you go into a chicken house, when you walk on your bedding, you realize that the bedding starts sticking on your boots. Then, meaning that your litter now is becoming a bit wet. So all those things are a clear indication that you need to start ventilating so that the beds are more comfortable. Because what happens with ventilation, if you don't react to what I've just said, those indications, the pity about it is that you won't see the impact immediately. You might see from the first week, second week, there's no problem, but what happened at that particular time, you find that the beds are already infected on their respiratory system, on their organs like the Essex, the tracheas, and all that. So what happens is, as the chickens grow, while they've already been infected, you will see after, say, the 4th week, then you start having issues. You start having chickens dying, because now they're now fully grown. Now the organs need to work hard, because now the chickens they need more oxygen, but because they are infected, now they can't cope with the demand of oxygen, because now they're already infected. So you find that you get this spike of mortality towards the end of the cycle, and you wonder what happened. So all this is based on how did you go about managing your brooding period. So it is crucial to make sure that we manage our houses with ventilation properly. Then I've put for you here, just to show in terms of ventilation, the picture you see now, where there is literally no activity inside your chicken house. Why? It's not because the chickens are cold. Oftentimes, if you go to a chicken house, you find that they're laying around the walls and everywhere, and they're not moving. You think the first thing comes to your mind is, oh, maybe it's hot, it's cold in here. Then you push your temperature. Whilst that's not the case. In that time, you find that your carbon dioxide is too high. So you can see on this picture that the carbon dioxide is over 10,000 ppm. So the activity inside the chicken house will be reduced. And because the activity is reduced, the chickens are not eating, they are not drinking water, they'll be dehydrated. And there's also the issue of ascites. If we don't know what ascites is, some are calling it water belly. Actually, it's related to the lack of oxygen. If there's no oxygen inside your chicken, you're more likely to see incidents of ascites. And oftentimes you find that this ascites happens when the chickens are big already, because now they are already been infected. So we must make sure that by all costs we keep our carbon dioxide low. Now we're gonna look into feeding as one aspect for during brooding phase that we need to manage. So when the chickens come into a chicken in the house, we need to make sure that we have laid enough feed for them to consume immediately. So in essence, what we need to do is, when we're preparing the house, we must have additional feed. You can call it supplementary feed, whereby you can use your sheet paper that you lay inside your chicken in that area of brooding to cover at least 50% of the area where you're brooding. So you still have to put your feeders in, so that at least you can introduce the bait to the feeders, even if you still have the paper on your floor. So the amount of feed that you need to put on the paper and the feeder pens at that time is, work it around at least 75 grams per chick. So what you do, you just go 75 grams times the amount of beds that you have, then you know how many feed you need to lay on the chick paper, and also on your feeder. So the paper and that feed should last you at least four days. So in essence, after 4 days, you realize that the beds are no longer eating on the paper. So don't just keep on topping up the paper after 4 days, because now the chicks now are now used to eat in the pens, and once they start eating in the pen, they're not going to go back and eat on your paper. So whatever feed you put on the paper at that period, will be wasting that feed, and we know how much feed costs. We don't want to waste that feed. So after at least 24 hours after placement, we need to perform the so-called crop fill. We need to go inside the chicken house, and we can demagate some few beds, then maybe from the front, the middle, and the back of your area. Just take some of the chicks and fill the crop. So you need to you can go for at least 10% of the beds inside your chicken house, just by go filling the crops, and see after 24 hours how many beds have eaten. Ideally, we're looking at least 95% of your beds should have feed and water in the crop. So the next slide you will see on this picture, then you see the first chick here, whereby there's feed and water. So inside the crop will be full. When you fill it, you can feel it's soft, it's got feed, and it's got water inside. The next one you can see where it's water only. So this one is, you get worried when you find more of this type, because now, meaning that over 24 hours, this bed have not eaten feed. So the other one here, it will be the feed only inside the crop. When you fill that crop, it will be hard because it doesn't have water, it's only feed. So you don't want many base to be like this. Now this last one here where there's no feed and there's no water. So this one is more likely to die in 4 days because now it hasn't eaten for 24 hours. If it made it through, you know already it has lost a day. So it has never put on weight for a day. So it was at the end of the cycle, it's not going to survive. It's not going to give you the desired weight. So mainly after 24 hours, perform the crop field so that you can know if you find that you're less than the 90%, the 95% we're talking about. You need to know what to do. You need to adjust now. Check, go back and check your brooding. Check your amount of feed that you have on the floor. So another aspect of importance is water provision during brooding period. One of my colleagues used to call it the forgotten nutrient. So water is very crucial for the base because now the chickens will never eat feed if there's no water. Remember, the feed comes dry, and we need some water to lubricate that so that the chicken can continue consuming that feed. So water is mainly to drive the feed through. It drives the feed consumption of the base. So ideally, we need to know the golden rule here is that the chick will drink, they will consume twice as much water as feed. So we can see how much crucial it is to have clean water inside our chicken house. The other thing we need to know to consider is the temperature of the water. We know during the brooding time we provide heat. So and our beds, because they're still small, they're drinking slowly. They don't drink as much water. So oftentimes you find that our water that we put in the drinkers might get a bit warm. And when the water is warm, the chicks won't drink as much as they should be. So it's important, depends on what you're using. If you're using the bell drinkers or you're using the chick phones or you're using the nipple drinkers. With the nipple drinkers, the ideally is to make sure that you flush the water lines more frequently so that the temperature of the water is at the desired temperature. So another thing is to make sure that in terms of water, it's advisable to more often to take water samples, send it to the lab. Ideally, you can do it one per semester. So in 6 months time, you send the samples to the lab and just to see what is it inside that is inside your water. They check for the hardness of water, the chemicals inside the water, so that you can know if you have to put on chlorine in terms of what's the pH of the water. Then you can be doing that based on the result from the lab. It's always imperative to measure, to see, to get to those results. Then we know what our water quality is. So another thing, which is ideally one of the aspects of brooding, the aspect of importance during brooding phase is the light. So I know some of the guys are not using the lights. They just depend, more especially the open-sided houses. They just depends on the light. But on the environmentally controlled houses, you definitely have to use lights because now your house is like closed off. So the main thing during this time of brooding phase with light is we must make sure that the lights are well spread inside the chicken house, whereby the intensity is correct. It's right in a way that the chickens can see around, can access feed and water. So as the chickens grow, you consider reducing the light intensity because now you don't want to stress those bases. But ideally, what we want to look at is the lighting program. So we recommend that 24 hours on that day of placement, you don't have to switch off your lights. You need to keep your lights on throughout so that the birds can get used to the environment. So from day 1 to day 7, you must go, at least you must switch off the light an hour, 1 hour, then you have 23 hours of light period. So at 7 days upwards, now that's where you need to work out what to do in terms of your lights. So you need to check your weight. At 7 days, you need to do a test weight, and now you can now plan around how many hours you need. You can go at least up from 4 hours to 6 hours. Don't go beyond 6 hours, because that will those birds will be now starving, and you don't want to starve the birds, because when they starve, what happens is now they lose on weight now. So the main aspect, the main importance about lights is, or about light program, is that during that time when the lights are off, the chickens get time to rest, and at that period, it's easier for them to convert the feed. So it's crucial to give the birds time for resting. And also, again, is for them to get used to the dark period, because at some point you might have a power failure, the light goes off, and you don't want those birds to be affected by the darkness, because oftentimes if that happens, the chicken gets stressed, and you find that eventually they will take a time to recover and go back and consume your feed. So we need to give them that period whereby they can digest that feed and also convert it into weight, and our FCR will be improved. On this slide, what I've done here, I've put together this just for the farmers to understand what is it that we need, that we expect after putting effort on our brooding period. What is it that we need to expect at the end of the cycle? Like I say, your actions or your efforts during brooding period will determine the outcome, will determine what the performance will be at the end of the cycle. So as you can look at this table, bottom there, we've got temperatures that from 0 day, we need the temperatures to be at that point. And we can see that as the chickens grow, the temperature requirement reduces, because now the chickens are grown now, the metabolism is working, and they now generate a lot of heat to them. So now you need to break down in terms of your temperature. So in essence, the chicks will require a temperature of some point whereby it will eat the amount of feed. This feed here is daily consumption. So every day a chicken should eat and put on weight every day on the average daily gain. So they will eat and convert that feed at a certain ratio so that it will gain some grams for that day. So eventually it must work out at every 7 days. That's why we recommend that at every 7 days you need to do a test weight. Why do we do test weight? We want to measure how far are we in terms of the progress of the chickens in terms of weight. So you need to know what weights are expected at 7 days, what weights are expected at 14, 21, 28, and so forth. So if your weight at 7 days, you are at around less than 193 grams, so you need to now start adjusting in terms of the feed, the environment. You need to do something, because like I said, this is a sprint. We've got no time for redress here. If you fall back, there is very limited time to recover. So every day counts. So it's important for the farmers to make sure that you start doing test weights so that you can measure your progress. So for this next slide, I've put for you the poster from Cobb. This is actually the 5 brooding principles. This is all what we have covered this today. So it's on actually a poster whereby you can access it on our website. What you can do, you just go into your search, your Google, you search for Cobb SA. When you are in there, it will open up the page and it will say superior chicken in every way. Then you click on that. Then it will go to find more. Then on that you will see the publications. When you go into that to publications, you will find all variety of things that we post for the farmers to access and to know, to help you through how to manage your chickens. That was in there. You can get the posters, you can get the broiler management guide, and so forth. So make use of the app, make use of that, whereby you can just go into our website. Then it will help you through to get more information. Because of time, we can't cover everything. But so far, I hope you really find it interesting and beneficial for you. And up to here, I want to say thank you for tuning in, and we hopefully you're gonna go back and look into what have you been doing all the time and what can you take from this and implement so that you can better your performance. So thank you very much, and thank you for Stefan and the team from Epol. And what we'll do next, we'll go for a short break. Then after that, then we'll go for your question and answers. Then myself and Stefan will work hard to make sure that we answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you very much, Phiri, for your very informative and enlightening presentation. Thanks for the nice practical approach that you took. I think it's good knowledge to share with everyone, and I think we'll see the benefits from that. We're now going to a question and answer session as usual. Thanks to everyone that sent in questions. We really appreciate it. It gives us a bit of an idea of what guys are experiencing in the field and what they're worried about or what they want more knowledge on. So thank you. I'm going to start with a question from Colin Bekwa. So Colin has asked, can you give broilers the previous cycle's feed, or will it affect their weight? So yes, Colin, a good question. I think it's a practical thing that happens from the biggest farmers to the smaller farmers. I think a number of principles to keep in mind. So I think the first one is, the question is, how old is the feed that you've been feeding for the first cycle, if I can put it like that. So if it's freshly made feed and fairly recently manufactured, that's a definite. That makes it a lot easier to do it. If your time period between cycles isn't very long, so if it's a normal 7 or 10 day break between cycles, that's also making it a lot easier. If your storage conditions are very good, that will also help to prolong the life of or the value of your feed. So in short, to conclude, yes, you can do it. Feed's got about a 6-month best before date. Your vitamins and minerals are stable, and they can have their normal efficiency up to 6 months of age, if you want to call it that. So yes, as long as your feed's not more than 6 months old, and as long as you don't have insect infestation, you're welcome to use feed from the previous cycle into the next cycle. The next question I'll ask Phiri to address for us. And this question is from Mbuzi Mapumolu, and he's asking, am I doing the right thing by making sure there's enough feed before sunrise and before sunset? Or do I have to keep it in the feeders the whole day? Phiri, if you can share your thoughts there with us, please.
Yes, that's an interesting question, Mbuzi. And I would say, in essence, you're doing the right thing to make sure that you've got feed during sunrise and sunset. Ideally, you need to make sure that you have feed throughout inside your pens. You have to make sure that how you manage your feeding times. Because oftentimes you go to a chicken house in the morning, the gas switch knock off around 4, and they come the following day. You go into a chicken house, the feeders are empty. So that will be an indication that now you start starving your pets, and that's not good for the pets. So ideally, just to answer your questions, make sure that by all time we've got feed in your pens. Like I said, this is a sprint. No time for redress. So make sure that you've got feed at the time. The chickens should have feed and eat, consume water and feed by all means. So that's the long and short for my answer. Make sure that you have feed by all means. Thank you.
Thank you there, Phiri. We'll now move to our next question, and the next question is from John Kapane. So John is asking, how long can I store my feed in bulk? And sometimes I compare the composition of feeds from different companies and mostly look at the protein. Is it a fair comparison? So yes, John, I think I've answered the first part of your question together with Colin's question. So it actually overlaps. In terms of your second part of the question, I think I want to say well done. It's very good to compare the different nutrient quantities in feed, and you're obviously well aware of looking at the labels and getting information from there. So yes, good that you're looking at the protein. Protein is very much supportive of growth of your chicken. So the higher the protein content and the better quality proteins you have, up to a certain spec, of course, the better your chicks are going to perform. It's also important to keep in mind that you need to look at energy, and although you can't see it on the label, energy is supportive of feed conversion ratio, or how efficient your bird converts nutrients into live mass. So you'll see from trial and error and from your word of mouth from fellow customers, or from technical advisors, Epol technical advisors. So they'll be able to advise you on the energy content of the feed and how it supports your FCR. So also look out for that, because that's an important nutritional component, but also a very important cost component of your feed. There's also information about calcium and phosphor content. So as I've said in the previous episode, very important for bone development. and leg health. So make sure that you're well covered on those two nutrients as well. So yeah, thanks, John, for your question. I hope I've covered most of the areas there. Our last question is around the time that the lights should be switched off during the night, or the lights off period, and that's coming from Alex Mandanda. So again, Tau, I think if you can handle this last question for us, just a nice practical way of what time to switch off the lights.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Alex, and that's a very interesting question also. So ideally, in terms of lights, the main thing that you need to know is you must make sure that the off time should always be constant. If, say, you switch off the lights at 9 in the evening and maybe you go for 4-hour program, it must be every day. It must switch off from 9 up to the hour that you want to go for. If you go for 4 hours, start at 9 every time. So I would say, ideally, switch off the lights, say around 9. Mainly, we look at the season. Let's say if it's winter, you can switch off around 9, and then you go for 4 hours. So you switch off the lights at 9. Then as the chicken grow, let's say before you start slaughtering the birds, or you start selling when they are big enough. Let's say you're targeting 35 days. You need to start at around 30 days. Then you cut back in terms of your lights. So when you cut back, you don't cut from 9. You must cut. Let's say you switch off from 9, then it will be 10, 11, 12, 1, 2. Let's say you go for 6 hours. Then you from 30 days, then you'll cut 1 hour back. So that will be your lights will come on now at 1. The following day you cut, then the lights come back on 12, like that. But ideally during summer, we know that during the day it's hot, and the consumption at that time, because it's hot, chickens cannot consume as much feed as they're supposed to, because they'll be battling with heat. So you can look into moving your lights slightly higher. Let's say maybe you switch off at 10 or at 11, just to compensate that time whereby the chickens have not been eating during the day. And during the cooler time at around 6, 7, when you go to a chicken house, you find that chickens are eating much, because now they haven't been eating. So to compensate that time during summer, go slightly higher, say around 10 to 10 to 11 in the evening. So ideally, that's how you need to manage your lights. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you there, Phiri. We're concluding now this episode. So from my side, very big thank you to Phiri for spending time with us and sharing his insights and his knowledge. Next week we're continuing. We're looking at the second half of the growth cycle of your broiler. Very important. Obviously, you're starting strong, but you also want to finish strong. So Phiri is going to share some of his knowledge and experience with us during next week. So keep your eyes out on social media for further information. Please send through questions. As you can gather from today's episode, Phiri's got really nice hands-on knowledge. So make use of the opportunity to send through questions to him. And we're looking forward to seeing you again next week. So have a good week and all of the best, and looking forward. Thank you. Bye.